No one wants me, my ex-wife whispered in my kitchen, lifting her shirt to show me the scar she thought made her unlovable. But I stepped closer and said, I do, and I meant it more than I meant the vows I broke 4 years ago. Her name is Claire, and she was once my wife, the woman I let walk out my door because I went silent instead of fighting for her. Now she's back in this same town, a cancer survivor, abandoned a second time by the man she married after me, standing in my kitchen, certain that no one could ever want her again. But what she doesn't know, what she's about to find out in the next few minutes, is why I said, I do, instead of goodbye this time, and why those 2 small words were about to undo 4 years of the biggest mistake of my life. Because the truth about why our marriage really ended, and the reason she came back to my door of all the doors in the world, is not the story anyone in this town thinks it is. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm 37 years old, and for 12 years I have made my living crawling under other people's houses, listening to pipes. That's the thing nobody tells you about being a plumber. You don't just fix leaks, you learn to listen for them. A drip behind a wall sounds different from a crack in a foundation. A slow leak sounds patient. A burst pipe sounds like panic. And after enough years, you start hearing the same difference in people. I heard it in Claire the second I saw her again. Patient. Slow. Something had been leaking in her for a long time. Quietly. Behind a wall nobody had opened yet. I didn't know yet that I was about to be the one who opened it. Let me take you back 4 years, because you need to understand what kind of man was standing in that kitchen before you understand why what happened there mattered so much. 4 years ago, I was married to the loudest laugh in any room. Claire Whitaker didn't walk into a space, she arrived in it. She talked with her hands like she was conducting an orchestra only she could hear. She painted with mustard on toast, just to make our mornings less boring. She used to grab my face with both hands, right in the middle of an argument, and say, look at me. We're still us. And somehow that would fix everything. We were the couple people rolled their eyes at. 26 years old, dancing in grocery store aisles, finishing each other's sentences. So often our friends started finishing them for us as a joke. I thought that kind of love was unbreakable. I was wrong. And I was the reason. 5 months into a pregnancy we had already named. Eli if it was a boy, June if it was a girl. We lost the baby. One ordinary Tuesday morning. Gone. No warning. No explanation the doctors could give us that made any of it make sense. I want you to understand something about grief, because it matters for everything that comes after. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like a man who picks up a hammer instead of his wife's hand, because a nail he can fix. A wound in his marriage. He doesn't know how to touch without making it worse. That was me. I built things. I fixed sinks that weren't broken. I stayed at job sites until dark because the house was too quiet, and the quiet had her sadness inside it. And I didn't know how to walk into a room and sit inside someone else's pain without drowning in my own. Claire begged me, not once, dozens of times. Daniel, talk to me. Daniel, don't disappear on me. Daniel, I am begging you to fight for this marriage. And every single time, I gave her something calm, something reasonable, something that was not the one sentence she actually needed to hear, which was, I am terrified, and I don't know how to lose you too, so please don't ask me to be brave about this, because I am not. I never said that sentence, not once. I said I'm fine instead. I said give me some time. I said the kind of soft, useless things men say when they are drowning and too proud to call it drowning. 8 months after we lost the baby, Claire left. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She packed 2 suitcases on a Saturday afternoon while I was at a job site fixing someone else's water heater, and by the time I got home, her side of the closet was just empty hangers, swinging slightly, like they were still deciding whether to believe it too. I signed the divorce papers 11 months later, like a man trying to prove he could be dignified about the worst decision of his life. I want you to sit with that for a second, because it matters. I am not telling you a story about a good man who got a broken woman back. I am telling you about a man who broke first, and spent 4 years learning how not to do it again, and then got a chance to prove it, in the last place, at the worst possible moment, with the highest possible stakes. That chance started on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was on my second cup of coffee, half asleep, staring at a service call sheet, when my phone rang at 6:52 a.m. That's early even for me, and the name on the screen stopped my hand halfway to the mug. Nora, Claire's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. "Before you say anything," Nora said, "the second I picked up, I need you to not be weird." That's never a good opening line. I put the coffee down. That's a strange thing to lead with. "Claire's staying at Mom's place for a while," Nora said. There was something tight in her voice, something rehearsed, like she'd practiced this call in the car before making it. "Okay," I said slowly. "Is she—" "Daniel." Her voice cracked, just slightly on my name. "She's not okay. She had surgery. Breast cancer. They caught it early. They think they caught it early. But it was a hard year. A really hard year." I set the mug down so hard coffee sloshed over the rim and onto the service sheet, blurring somebody's address into a brown smear. "What kind of hard year?" I asked. Even though some part of me already knew, the way you know a pipe is about to burst before you hear the sound. A pressure in the air, a wrongness you can't name yet. Nora went quiet for 2 full seconds. In my line of work, 2 seconds of silence before an answer usually means the news is worse than the question. "Damon's gone," she said. Damon, her husband. The man Claire married 18 months after our divorce was final. Good watch, better teeth, the kind of confidence that comes from a life where nothing has ever actually gone wrong for you yet. "Gone how?" I asked, even though the word "gone" only really has one devastating meaning when a woman has just had cancer surgery and her sister is calling at 7 in the morning to warn someone to be normal. "Gone like he decided sickness wasn't in the vows he actually meant," Nora said. And there was real anger under the words now. Old anger. The kind that's been sitting in someone's chest for months. She doesn't want the whole town knowing the details. "So when you see her, and you will see her, because she's staying 2 streets from you, Daniel, I know you know that. Just be normal. Be normal." People say that phrase like it's a setting you can just switch to. Like normal is a room you can walk back into anytime you want. It isn't. Not when the woman you failed once is coming home broken by somebody else, and some ugly, guilty, hopeful part of you is already wondering if this is the universe handing you a second door after you slammed the first one shut yourself. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept picturing her the way I remembered her. Loud, bright, alive in every room she entered, and trying to overlay it with the woman Nora had just described, and the 2 images wouldn't line up. I didn't know yet how much they wouldn't line up. I didn't know yet how much a year could change a person's whole shape, not just her body, but the way she stood in a doorway, like she was bracing for something. I found out the next afternoon. I was driving back from a job, a burst pipe under someone's kitchen sink, the kind of easy fix that pays the bills and doesn't ask anything of your heart, when I turned onto her mother's street, out of habit more than plan, and there she was, Claire, standing beside an open car door, wrestling a cardboard box out of the back seat, like it had personally offended her. I want to tell you exactly what I saw, because it's burned into me the way certain images just are, permanently, whether you want them there or not. Her hair was different, shorter, soft, cropped just past her jaw, where it used to fall halfway down her back, in a way she used to complain about and secretly love. She was thinner than I remembered, sharper at the shoulders, the kind of thin that isn't a diet, it's a battle. And there was something in the way she held herself, careful, guarded, like she was bracing for a blow she already knew was coming from somewhere, even standing alone on an empty street in broad daylight. She saw me before I could decide whether to say something or just drive past and pretend I hadn't noticed. Some coward part of me wanted to drive past. I didn't. I pulled over, got out, and she looked at me with a smile so practiced, so rehearsed, it actually hurt to watch. Like a smile she kept in her pocket, specifically for moments, exactly like this one. "Reeves," she said. 4 years divorced, and she still used my last name, the same way she had back in high school when we were dating, and both too stubborn to admit it out loud. I walked over and took the box out of her arms before she could argue about it. "Whitaker," I said back, using her maiden name, because apparently we were both traveling backward in time, without agreeing on it first. "You didn't have to come over. I know. Nora called you. It wasn't a question. I didn't insult her by pretending it was." "Nora called me," I admitted. She looked at me then. Really looked, for the first time in 4 years. Not the glance you give an acquaintance on the street, but the long, searching look of someone trying to remember if a person used to be safe, and whether that's still true. Something flickered behind her eyes. Not warmth exactly. Recognition. The look of two people who used to know each other by heartbeat, standing 3 feet apart now, like strangers, who happened to have read the exact same book once, a long time ago. "Well," she said finally, glancing at the box in my arms, "you're here. Might as well carry the heavy one. I want you to remember that line, because it's going to matter later. Might as well carry the heavy one." She didn't know yet how literally I was about to take that. Over the next 2 weeks, I found reasons. A gate at her mother's house that stuck. A faucet that dripped just enough to justify a visit. A garbage disposal that made a sound like a dying animal, which, professionally speaking, it kind of was. Nora orchestrated half of these excuses. I volunteered for the other half. Neither of us said out loud what we were doing, which was the same thing two people do when they're circling something they're both afraid to name. And slowly, carefully, the way you approach an animal that's been hurt before, Claire came back into focus for me. She still made fun of me in complete, devastating sentences. She still corrected my music taste, with the confidence of a woman who has never once been wrong about a song in her life. She baked when she was anxious, which I remembered from before. And one morning she handed me a lemon scone through her mother's screen door and said, "I made too many. It's not a gesture," which was one of the more obvious lies I had heard in the last 4 years. But there were fractures now. Small ones. The kind you only notice if you're paying very close attention. And I was paying very close attention. She wore loose shirts, even on warm afternoons. The kind of loose that isn't about comfort, it's about covering. She never stood near windows when she thought I might be looking. And once, when her phone lit up on the counter with a name I didn't recognize at first, Damon, in an old email thread she clearly hadn't gotten around to deleting, I watched something behind her eyes just quietly shut a door. I didn't ask. Not because I didn't want to know. Because 4 years ago, I was the man who needed things on his own schedule, who went quiet instead of asking, who let silence do the talking, until the silence cost me my marriage. This time, I told myself, I could wait as long as it took. I could be the kind of man who waits. I didn't know yet how soon that patience was going to be tested. I didn't know that in exactly 4 days, I would be standing in my own kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, watching the woman I used to call my wife lift the edge of her shirt with shaking hands, about to show me the one thing she was more afraid of than anything Damon had ever said to her. I didn't know that the 2 words I was about to say back to her were going to be the same 2 words I'd said to her once already, in front of everyone we ever loved, in a church that doesn't exist in either of our lives anymore. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew, standing in that driveway holding a cardboard box that smelled like her mother's cedar closet, was that something in Claire had gone very quiet in a very specific way, the way a house goes quiet right before a pipe gives out behind the wall. And some part of me, the part that spent 12 years learning to listen for exactly that sound, already understood that whatever was coming, it was coming soon. It came on a Sunday. Her mother was out. Nora was out. The house on that street was empty, except for Claire, sitting alone on the back porch steps in the fading light, one knee pulled up to her chest, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, even though the evening wasn't cold enough to need one. She heard the gate before she saw me. She looked up, and for a moment neither of us said anything at all. "Do you have wine?" she asked. 4 words, but I heard the whole year underneath them. "That bad?" I asked. She let out a small, brittle laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "That obvious? I want you to understand what it felt like, walking back to my truck for that bottle. It felt like standing at the edge of something with no railing, Like I already knew that whatever she was about to tell me on that porch was going to change the shape of both our lives, and there was no way to unknow it once she said it. I came back 10 minutes later, with a bottle of wine, 2 mismatched glasses I'd grabbed off my own kitchen shelf, and a feeling in my chest I hadn't felt in exactly 4 years. The feeling of standing on the edge of a truth so large it could either save you or take everything you had left. I sat down on the step beside her, close enough to matter, far enough to leave her room to breathe. She took one long sip of wine, stared out into the darkening yard, and finally turned to look at me with an expression I will remember for the rest of my life. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly, "and can you promise me you won't answer it like a man trying to be a good ex-husband?" I didn't smile, even though some old worn-out part of me wanted to. "When have I ever been that disciplined?" I said. It pulled a real laugh out of her, small but real, and then it disappeared, fast, like a light switching off. She set her glass down on the step between us, wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders, and in a voice so quiet I had to lean in just to catch it, she asked me the question that was about to change everything. "When you look at me now, Daniel, what do you actually see?" I sat there in the near dark, wine glass forgotten in my hand, and I understood immediately that this was not a small question. This was the question, the one she'd been carrying up every driveway, into every conversation, under every loose shirt for weeks. And I understood something else too, something that scared me more than anything Nora had said on the phone. Whatever answer I gave her in the next 10 seconds was either going to be the beginning of something neither of us had the courage to name yet, or it was going to be the second time in her life a man standing this close to her got the most important sentence of her life wrong. I didn't answer fast. That mattered more than anything else I could have done in that moment, because I have learned, the hard way, at the cost of an entire marriage, that people answer too quickly when they want to sound noble instead of true. So I looked at her, really looked, bare feet tucked under the blanket, short hair catching the last strip of porch light. One hand wrapped so tightly around that wine glass her knuckles had gone pale, like she needed something solid to hold on to, while she waited for my answer to either save her or break her further. "I see you," I said. Her face tightened immediately. "That's not an answer." "It is." "No." She looked away, out toward the dark yard, her jaw tight. "That's what people say when they don't want to say the real thing." I moved down one step, closer, but still leaving space between us. The kind of space that says I'm not going anywhere, not I'm coming for you. "Then here's the real thing," I said. "I see a woman who came home after the worst year of her life and still had the nerve to hand me a scone through a screen door and call it an accident. I see someone who pretends she doesn't need help carrying anything and then stands in a driveway supervising me like I'm failing a test I didn't know I was taking. I see someone who can still make Nora laugh so hard she has to sit down." I let that sit for a second. Then I said the part that mattered. "And yes, Claire, I see that you're tired. I see that something hurt you badly enough that you flinch when your own phone lights up. But I don't look at you and see damage first. I never have. Not even once." She didn't move. For a long time, the only sound on that porch was a dog barking somewhere down the street. Once, and then giving up. Then she whispered a name into the dark, like it had been sitting behind her teeth for months, waiting for permission to come out. Damon did. There it was. The name we'd all been stepping around since the phone call from Nora 4 days earlier. The name that explained the loose shirts, the flinching, the phone she wouldn't look at. I didn't move. I didn't trust my own face yet. "At first he was good about it," she said, her voice carefully flat, the way people talk when they've rehearsed a sentence so many times in their head that it stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like a fact they're just reciting. "Flowers. He came to every appointment. He said all the right things. We'll get through this together, in sickness and in health. All of it." Her mouth twisted, bitter. "He was excellent, at the version of loyalty other people could see." I felt something tighten in my chest, low and sharp. "And then it got real," she went on. "Recovery isn't pretty, Daniel. I wasn't fun anymore. I didn't have the energy to make him feel like a hero for staying next to a hospital bed. So he didn't leave all at once. That would have almost been cleaner. He just got busy, then careful, then far away, in a way you can feel even when someone's still sleeping in the same bed. Her voice dropped even lower. And one night I heard him on the phone with his brother, and he said he didn't know how to want me anymore. My jaw locked so hard it must have shone, because she glanced over and said, quiet but firm, Don't what? Look like you're about to put your fist through a wall. Occupational hazard, I said. And I meant it as a joke, but it came out rawer than I intended. I spend my whole career opening up walls to find what's actually broken behind them. Old habit. That pulled a small, cracked laugh out of her, the first real one all night, and I would have traded almost anything for a dozen more of those. Then her face went serious again, and she said something that hit me harder than anything else that whole evening. I already knew that sentence, Daniel. She wasn't looking at me now. I'd heard a quieter version of it once before, a long time ago, from someone else. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. I felt it land exactly where she meant it to. I looked down at the porch boards for a second, because if I looked at her too fast, 4 years of regret was going to take up more room in that moment than she needed from me right then. This wasn't about my guilt, not yet. This was about her. That's on him, I said finally. What Damon did, that's entirely on him. I paused. And the first time, what I did, that was on me. Never you. It was never you, Claire. She smiled, faint and sad. The kind of smile that doesn't reach anywhere near the eyes. That's the kind answer. No, I said. That's the true one. I let you walk out of our house because staying required a kind of bravery I didn't have yet. That was my failure. It was never proof that you were hard to love. It was proof that I was scared and too proud to say so. The porch went quiet again. Somewhere behind us, through the screen door, her mother's old refrigerator hummed along, like it had no idea a person was 10 feet away, quietly coming apart. I'm not that man anymore, I said. I know that's an easy thing to say. She looked at me for a long moment. I know you're not, she said. And then, so softly, I almost missed it entirely. That's the problem. The air between us shifted after that. Not romantic, not exactly, something more dangerous than that. Because there was something new in her face. Something that wasn't only grief anymore. It was fear. The fear of wanting comfort from the one person who had already proven, once, that he could disappear on her when it mattered most. I stood up before I let myself overthink it. Come on, I said. She frowned up at me. Where? My kitchen. You're cold, you've had maybe 4 bites of dinner in the last 2 days, and porch confessions are terrible for circulation. That is the least romantic rescue in recorded history. Good, I said. I'm keeping the bar low on purpose. She rolled her eyes at me. An actual, familiar, 4 years ago eye roll. But she stood, and she followed me out the gate. 10 minutes later, she was sitting on a stool at my kitchen island, wrapped in that same blanket, watching me crack eggs into a pan like I was diffusing something. She'd always said I cooked like I was negotiating with the pan. She said it again that night, quieter, like the joke cost her something to make. You still cook when you're scared, she said. I'm not scared. I'm appropriately focused. That sounds like something you'd write on an invoice. I slid a plate of grilled cheese in front of her. Simple, easy, the only thing I could make with my hands that's steady at 11 at night. She took one bite, closed her eyes for half a second, and muttered, I hate that this is good. For a few minutes, we managed something close to ordinary. It helped both of us. She ate the whole thing, slower than usual, but all of it and some of the tightness in her shoulders eased just slightly, the way a held breath finally lets go. Then she went very still, a different kind of stillness. The kind of stillness right before someone decides whether to say the last, worst thing they've been carrying. Can I show you something? She asked. I turned off the faucet immediately, hands still wet. You don't have to. I know. I mean it, Claire. Whatever it is. I know, she said, and her voice cracked slightly on the second word. That's exactly why I'm asking you. Not anyone else. You. I dried my hands slowly and turned to face her. She stood up from the stool, the blanket slipping off one shoulder onto the floor, and neither of us moved to pick it up. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes stayed steady in the bravest, saddest way I had ever seen a person look at me. And then she lifted the edge of her loose shirt, just enough to show me the place on her body where everything had changed. Not for drama, not for pity, for truth, the truest, most terrifying thing she had left to offer anyone. I did not look for long. I looked exactly long enough to understand what that single gesture had cost her. The weeks of loose shirts, the flinching at windows, the marriage that had ended over exactly this. Then I brought my eyes back up to her face. Always her face. Her mouth trembled once before she caught it and forced it still. The way she'd learned, I realized, to control even the act of breaking. Like even falling apart had to be done politely so it wouldn't inconvenience anyone. And in a voice so small it barely crossed the 3 feet of kitchen tile between us, Claire whispered the sentence that had apparently been living behind her ribs for months, waiting for exactly this moment to finally get out. No one wants me. I didn't move. Not yet. Not because I didn't want to. Every part of me wanted to close that distance immediately, but because I understood, all at once, with total clarity, that this was one of those rare, narrow moments a person could ruin completely by being even a second too quick. Too quick to reassure. Too quick to look away out of my own discomfort. Too quick to say some soft, noble-sounding thing that would feel beautiful in the moment and hollow the second she was alone again. The shirt was still lifted, her hand trembling slightly where she held it. She was watching my face the way you watch a door you are certain is about to close on you. One more time. The way doors always had. So I stepped closer, slowly. Not enough to crowd her. Just enough that she would know. Not hope. No. That I wasn't leaving this room. Not this time. And I said, I do. She froze completely. The shirt slipped from her fingers and fell back into place on its own. For a full second, I don't think either of us breathed. Daniel, I do, I said again. Quieter this time. Closer. And I need you to hear exactly where those 2 words are coming from, because they're not new. I said them to you once already, Claire. At the front of a church, in front of every single person we ever loved, and I meant them completely that day. I held her eyes and didn't let either of us look away. And then I spent our marriage forgetting them. One quiet, cowardly night at a time, until you had no choice left but to walk out a door I should have been standing in front of. Her face had started to crumple at the edges. Not all the way, just enough that I knew the words were finally getting past whatever armor she'd built over the last year. So this isn't a line, I said. This is the truest sentence I have ever said to you. 4 years too late. I want you. Not some easier version of you who never got hurt. Not the woman from before all of this happened. You. Exactly like this. The tired you. The furious you. The one who insults my van and lies about scones through a screen door. You don't have to say that, she whispered, and her voice was shaking now. I know I don't have to. You broke the first I do. Daniel? I did, I said. And it cost me something to say it out loud. Finally, after 4 years of only ever admitting it to myself in the quiet of an empty truck cab. And I have thought about that every single day since. That's not why I'm saying it again tonight. I'm saying it again because I finally learned how to mean these words out loud when it's hard, instead of only when it was easy. She shook her head. Once, almost angry now. But I understood immediately it wasn't anger at me. It was anger at hope itself, at how much it was asking of her to believe anything kind, after 2 different men had spent 2 different years quietly teaching her not to. You haven't seen all of it, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I don't need an inventory to know exactly who I'm talking to. That stopped her completely. Claire, I said, softer now, closing the last of the distance between us. Your body went through something brutal this year. That does not make it a warning label. It does not make you less wanted. And it sure as hell does not hand Damon, or the man I used to be 4 years ago, the right to be the voice you measure your own worth by for the rest of your life. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away fast, almost angry at her own body for betraying her. I hate that I still hear both of you, she admitted, her voice raw now. I can be fine for hours, Daniel. Genuinely fine. And then one mirror, one shirt, one memory, and I'm right back there, watching a man's face change in real time. Something broke open in me then, quietly, just enough. I reached out one hand, palm up, giving her the choice, refusing to take anything from her that she hadn't decided to give. She looked down at my open hand for a long moment. Then she placed hers inside it. Her fingers were freezing. I wrapped both of my hands around hers, holding on. "Then let's make a second one," I said. Her eyes lifted to mine, confused. "A second what?" "Everything," I said. "Not tonight. Not all at once. But you just showed me the exact thing you were most afraid to show anyone on earth. And I am still standing right here in front of you." I squeezed her hand gently. "Last time, Claire, this is exactly where I would have left. Gone quiet, gone still. Gone somewhere in my own head instead of staying in the room with you. This time, this is where I stay. That's the second one. That's the new memory we just made. Together. Right here in this kitchen." She stared at me like she was searching my face for the lie she was so sure had to be hiding somewhere in it. She didn't find one. And then she let out one small, broken laugh that turned into a sob before she could stop it. And something in her finally gave way completely. 4 years of silence. A year of illness. A marriage that had ended over the exact thing she'd just shown me. All of it breaking open at once, in my kitchen at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. I didn't pull her toward me. I waited. And when she stepped forward first, on her own, by her own choice, I wrapped my arms around her carefully, firmly, the way you hold something that is not fragile, but is precious. There is a difference between those two things, and I finally understood it. She cried into my shirt the way people cry when they have been holding it together for months because they were terrified that falling apart would only prove every terrible thing anyone had ever said about them. I rested my cheek against her hair and didn't say anything else for a long time. Some things don't need a speech behind them. They just need someone who doesn't leave the room. Morning came quietly. No dramatic light, no music swelling behind it. Just pale gray sun through my kitchen blinds, the smell of coffee, and Claire, standing in my hallway, wearing one of my old sweatshirts over a pair of borrowed pajama shorts, looking like someone who had slept better than she expected to, and worse than she actually needed. She leaned against the doorframe, watching me stand at the stove. "You cook like you're negotiating a settlement," she said. "I'm winning. You are absolutely not. Those eggs are a hostage situation." That was the first good thing that morning. Not the eggs. Those really were questionable. Her voice. A little rough from crying the night before. A little tired, but hers again. Sharp. Alive. Present in the room in a way I hadn't heard in 4 years. She sat at the island, while I put a plate in front of her. And for a few minutes we stayed in safe, ordinary territory. Coffee. Toast. My terrible eggs. Her mother's porch light that never turned off on its own timer. Nora's habit of sending 3 texts in a row when one would have done the job. Then Claire set her fork down, and I felt the air in the room change again, the way it had the night before. "I remember everything," she said. "From last night. Every word." I turned off the stove. "Okay? That's all you're going to say? Okay? That depends on what you need me to say next." Her mouth trembled into a small smile that didn't quite hold. "I need to know if you meant it. In daylight. Not just at 11 o'clock at night, with wine still in my system, and my defenses down." I didn't pretend not to understand what she was really asking. "Yes," I said. "The part where you said you wanted me? Yes. The part where you said it wasn't pity? Yes. The part where you said I'm not less of a woman because of what happened to my body." I came around the counter slowly and stopped close to her, waiting until she actually looked up and met my eyes before I answered that one. "Especially that part," I said. Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't look ashamed of it, didn't wipe it away fast like she was embarrassed to be caught feeling something. That felt like progress. Small, but real. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. Daniel, I'm really scared. Because if I let myself believe you, actually believe you, not just want to believe you, and then one day you look at me differently, the way he did, I don't think I survive that a second time. I can't promise I'll never make a mistake," I said honestly, because a false promise felt like exactly the kind of thing that had gotten us here in the first place. "But I can promise you this. I won't lie to you to make myself look better. I won't go quiet instead of talking to you. I want to know you, all the way through, the parts that are hard included. And I am not asking you to turn back into some old version of yourself in order for any of this to be real." She closed her eyes for a long second. When she opened them again, something in her face had softened. Not healed, Healing doesn't move that fast, no matter how much either of us wanted it to, but softened. "Can we go slow?" she asked. I almost laughed. "Claire, I unclog drains and replace water heaters for a living. Slow and steady is basically my entire professional brand." That pulled a real laugh out of her. The kind I remembered from before any of this happened. The kind that made the whole kitchen feel warmer just from being in the room with it. So we went slow. The first week, nothing officially changed except everything did. She came by the shop with coffee some mornings, sat on the bench out front while I loaded the van, gave unsolicited commentary on my organizational system that was, admittedly, not a system at all. I walked her home most nights. We talked more honestly in those 2 weeks than we had in the entire back half of our marriage, which told me everything I needed to know about exactly where we'd gone wrong the first time. One evening, she brought up the miscarriage on her own, without me asking, and she cried, and I didn't try to fix it or hurry her past it. I just sat there and let her be sad in front of me, which was the one thing I hadn't known how to do 4 years earlier, when it actually mattered most. 2 weeks in, I took her on what she insisted on calling our second first date, a small detail she found endlessly funny, given the paperwork sitting in a drawer somewhere with both our names on it. I picked her up at 7, brought flowers because Nora had genuinely threatened me if I showed up without any, and took her to a small place downtown where nobody knew our history and nobody looked at her like she'd survived something. They just saw a woman having dinner, which was exactly the point. After dinner we walked along the river that gives this whole town its name, and she went quiet for a while, then slipped her hand into mine like she was making a decision out loud, without needing to say it first. "I kept waiting to feel broken tonight," she admitted. "And?" She looked up at me. "Mostly I just felt nervous, because I like you too much." Which is deeply inconvenient, given that we already tried this once and it went badly. That sentence undid me more completely than any perfect, rehearsed confession could have. I stopped walking. She stopped too. And for once, neither of us reached for a joke to soften it. I touched her face gently, waited for the smallest nod of permission, and then I kissed her. Carefully, slowly, not like I was trying to prove desire, and not like I was trying to erase 4 years that actually happened. Just like a man who had finally been given the chance to meet a woman in the present instead of living in his own regret, and wanted, for once in his life, to do it right. When we finally pulled apart, she was crying again, but smiling this time, which was an entirely different kind of crying than the porch, than the kitchen, than any of the tears that had come before it. "That was different," she whispered. "Good different?" She nodded. "Second different." That became our word after that night. Second. The second first date. The second time she wore a fitted dress in public, not because she had to prove anything to anyone, but because she wanted to. The second time she let me photograph her laughing in the doorway of my shop, sunlight cutting across her face, looking nothing like a woman who thought no one wanted her. The second morning she woke up at my place, stole my sweatshirt straight off the hanger, and announced, "I'm keeping this." Emotionally and legally. Like a woman reclaiming territory one small joke at a time. 8 months later, Damon tried to call her. She was sitting on my couch when the phone lit up with his name. She looked at it, watched it ring once, and then, without a word, handed it to me. Not because she needed me to answer it for her, but because she wanted me to witness the moment she chose not to. Then she took the phone back and declined the call herself, thumb steady, no hesitation at all. "I think I just chose my own voice over his," she said quietly, setting the phone face down on the cushion between us. I kissed her forehead. About time. A year and a half after that Sunday night in my kitchen, we stood in Nora's backyard under a string of lights. Nora had spent an entire weekend arguing with her husband about hanging correctly, and we got married again. Same 2 people, completely different 2 people, if that makes any sense at all. Claire laughed all the way through her vows, because happiness still startled her sometimes, still caught her off guard like a gift she hadn't fully trusted was allowed to be hers. When it was my turn, I only had 2 words fully prepared, and everyone standing in that backyard already knew exactly which 2 they were going to be. "I do," I said, and this time, I meant it in a way that included every single hard, unglamorous day that was still coming. Not just the easy ones. This time, I kept it. People ask me sometimes, usually after a few drinks at some family gathering, when I actually knew I still loved her. They expect me to talk about the wedding, or the second first date, or the kiss by the river. I never mention any of those. I think about my kitchen instead. About a woman standing there at 11 o'clock at night, terrified of being unwanted, lifting the edge of her shirt to show me the truth she thought would end us both. And about the moment I finally understood the difference between the man who goes quiet when it's hard and the man who steps closer instead. Because that wasn't the ending of anything. That was where the real marriage, the one that actually survives, first began. So here's what I want to leave you with, because I think it matters more than the rest of the story. If someone you had already failed once came back into your life at the very lowest point of theirs, and they showed you the exact thing they were most afraid would make you leave, would you have the courage to step closer instead of going quiet? And more than that, have you ever had to learn, the hard way, that you were still worthy of being loved after someone taught you to believe the opposite? I'd really like to know. Tell me in the comments below.